I have cancer, and on my deathbed, my wife refuses to come see me. I know that choosing this woman was a mistake. Just as I prepare to die alone, the door to the hospital room opens. My childhood sweetheart arrives. She cries to me, telling me she likes me. Her words fill me with endless regret. If I had chosen her back then, would everything have been different? I slowly close my eyes. When I open them again, I find myself back in high school class. Is this a dream? No, it's not a dream. My childhood sweetheart is sitting right beside me. Chapter 1. Mr. Owen, Ms. Winnie said she can't make it and asked me to check on you, the company manager said after a moment's hesitation. Leave, I said, waving my hand weakly. Watching the drip in the bottle grow scarcer, I knew that my life, like the drip, was nearing its end. And in this final moment, my wife couldn't even be bothered to come see me. Can't make it. She's definitely busy swallowing up my shares. In 3 years of marriage, I took her from a fresh graduate to the leader of the company. Yet she can't even be bothered to spend the final moments of my life with me. I feel like such a failure. Even though my business succeeded and the company kept growing, my health fell apart. And at this moment, my wife's actions tell me that I'm a failure in marriage too. That feeling is terrible. The door to the room opened. I couldn't be bothered to look. I'm a dying man anyway. Owen. A voice, both familiar and unfamiliar, followed. Irene. When I saw the face of the person approaching, a bitter feeling welled up inside me. No wonder it felt familiar and unfamiliar, it was her. She and I grew up together, our families living together, and we were classmates from elementary school through high school. We had a great relationship until college, when we went our separate ways. After the old city was demolished, we barely even saw each other. Irene asked with tears in her eyes, "Is there still hope?" Advanced stage stomach cancer. There's nothing we can do. I forced out a smile, hoping to make it less difficult for her to accept. Why didn't you tell me? Irene's tears instantly broke through the dam. Come on, don't cry. I reached out to wipe away her tears. Was I supposed to tell her and make her sad? I don't have a habit of burdening others with negative emotions, and since our marriage, I've deliberately kept my distance from her. As if Irene hadn't cried enough, she threw herself into my arms and continued sobbing. I wanted to push her away, but thinking of my wife's actions, I gave up. What are you doing? After a long silence, I asked softly. I've liked you for so many years, what's wrong with a hug? Irene said, her eyes reddening. For so many years. Irene's words stunned me. She's liked me, for all these years. How can you be so dense? If I didn't like you, why would I follow you from class to class? If I didn't like you, why would I follow you everywhere you go? If I didn't like you, why would I immediately stand by your side and claim my territory every time another girl talks to you? I'm a girl, and I've been so obvious about it, why can't you see it? Irene pounded my arm with her fists, unable to hold back the words that had been buried in her heart any longer. I was stunned. Perhaps because we were too close, too familiar, I had never noticed it before. Why can't you ever see it? And why, just when I finally worked up the courage to confess, did you choose someone else? And now, why do you have to leave first? Irene stared at me with reddened eyes, her face streaked with tears. I fell silent. I didn't know how to answer. Besides, I was running out of time, and I didn't want to give her even a sliver of false hope at a moment like this. Forget about me, I said softly. Thank her for staying with me all these years. And thank her for being willing to accompany me through the final journey of my life. The sensation of Irene's hand in mine was growing weaker and weaker. I knew it was time to let go. Still, I couldn't help but feel a hint of regret. If I hadn't been so foolish and had realized her feelings sooner, would I have lived a different life? If I had been with her, I probably wouldn't have felt so much pressure. She wouldn't have pushed me to strive for success, which ultimately led to my stomach cancer. If it had been her, I would have been truly happy, wouldn't I? Doctor. Doctor. Irene's voice grew fainter and fainter, and I felt my eyelids grow heavy. I tried to open them, but I couldn't. Goodbye, this girl who loved me. Accompanied by the sharp sound of the heart monitor, my eyes closed forever. Chapter 2. Owen. Stand up. Accompanied by the sound of knocking on the desk, I slowly opened my eyes. The first thing I saw was Teacher Samuel's big face. Is this a dream? Why did my high school teacher from back then randomly show up in my dream just before death? Samuel. Is this a dream from high school? I quickly looked to the right. I saw her. My deskmate, Irene. At that time, she was still a bit immature, her youthful face full of nervousness. She was probably afraid I would anger the homeroom teacher. Thinking about it now, it seems like every time something happened, she was the one I worried about the most. Who would have thought that before dying, I could still have a sweet dream? Not bad at all. Ignoring Samuel's piercing gaze, I walked over to Irene, took a deep breath, and suddenly kissed her. When our lips pressed together, I could clearly see the panic in her eyes, and even feel her breath. Such a realistic dream. I had no intention of pulling away from this kiss. I knew I wouldn't wake up, so I might as well enjoy kissing to my heart's content in the dream. My mind was wandering aimlessly. Some of the classmates around covered their mouths, others froze mid-motion. But without exception, they all stared at me with wide eyes. Hiss. The piercing pain in my waist forced me to pull apart. What are you doing? Irene pinched me, then lowered her head. I could clearly hear her heartbeat quickening. A large hand followed, twisting my ear. The sharp, genuine pain made me wonder if this was a dream. Could you hit me? I whispered to Irene. Slapping you, is it? Let me handle it. Samuel's voice came from behind me. Smack. The feeling of the ruler hitting me was so real. This isn't a dream. Did I really go back to high school? Samuel grabbed me by the ear with one hand and glared at me. Look at you. Sleeping in class is bad enough, but you dare to kiss a female classmate right in front of me. Do you have no shame? I quickly explained. Sorry, teacher, I was actually giving her CPR. I thought she was having trouble breathing. She often gets chest tightness and shortness of breath. Is that so? Samuel's eyes behind his glasses stared intently at me. That's right, Irene said without looking up, covering for me, but her hand under the table subtly pinched me. Come to my office after class. Samuel took a deep breath, reluctantly accepting my absurd excuse. I quickly sat back down, glancing at Irene from time to time. She lowered her head, her pretty face flushed red. She probably hadn't expected me to be so bold. I have absolutely no interest in listening to Samuel's lecture. I only want to change my life, which was a complete mess. And also, give this girl who loves me a happy life. That sudden kiss just now completely shattered the understanding of the entire Class 3, Grade 2. Everyone knows that Irene and I grew up together as childhood friends. Our relationship was so close that we were practically inseparable, but no one had ever seen us cross that line. Everyone assumed we had a purely platonic friendship, and no one thought about romance. But today in class, I directly kissed my deskmate in front of everyone. It was like a thunderbolt out of the blue. At that moment, fireworks exploded in the hearts of the whole class. They're shipping it. They're really shipping it. This vibrant, passionate youth filled with the warmth of everyday life is a scene I desperately longed for before my death in my past life, but could never touch again. In my past life, I stayed up late relentlessly, worked tirelessly, and climbed the social ladder endlessly, swept along by the worldly pursuit of gain. I was emotionally manipulated by my wife, Winnie, wearing my body down until it gave out, leaving my life in utter disarray. I thought money, status, and owning a company meant success. In the end, I realized I had lost all tenderness and favor, and lost the only person who truly cared for me. Thankfully, fate gave me a chance to start over. In this life, I will not chase empty fame or cling to false affection. I only want my little girl, safe, happy, with each passing year, by my side. Chapter 3. The long 45-minute class passed by in the blink of an eye for me. As soon as the bell rang, Samuel closed the textbook and locked his gaze on me with precision. "Owen, come with me to the office." The whole class instantly turned to look at me, their eyes filled with the excitement of gossip, lowering their heads as if packing their books, while secretly stealing glances. Irene nervously let go of my hand immediately and whispered, "Be polite, don't talk back to the teacher." Teacher Samuel is the type who responds better to softness than toughness. Seeing her look even more nervous than I was, my heart warmed. I reached out and ruffled her hair. The soft strands slipped through my fingers, feeling incredibly pleasant. I smiled and comforted her, "Don't worry, it's fine. At worst, I'll get a couple of scoldings, nothing lost. Now's not the time for your wisecracks." Irene anxiously pinched my arm again, but the force was as light as a tickle. "What if you get a demerit? What if you get publicly criticized?" Seeing her furrowed brows and genuine worry, a bittersweet warmth welled up in my heart. There was always someone silently worrying and caring for me behind my back. No matter if I did something wrong or foolish, her first reaction wasn't to blame me, but to fear that I'd face punishment. This is the special favor and love that Winnie could never give me. Irene lowered her eyes, her voice soft. "Go ahead, I'll wait for you in the classroom." I nodded, stood up, and walked out of the classroom. As soon as I stepped out the door, a burst of barely suppressed laughter came from behind me, mixed with faint murmurs. "Oh my God, Owen was so bold today. Kissing Irene right in the middle of class. I'm totally stunned. They were secretly into each other this whole time. I always thought it was just pure friendship." Irene's face was completely red just now. "I'm shipping them so hard. This pair is locked in for me. No wonder they've been inseparable since childhood. Turns out there were undercurrents brewing all along." Hearing the chatter behind me, I felt not a hint of embarrassment, but rather a sense of calm, and even a little secret delight. The truest love ought to be open and passionate. Why should it be hidden? In my past life, I was too deliberate about keeping my distance, and in the end, I pushed away the person who loved me the most. In this life, I will be open and unashamed, giving my favor boldly and without reservation. Walking into the teacher's office, Samuel plopped down into a chair, folded his arms across his chest, and fixed me with a gaze as sharp as an X-ray machine, as if he wanted to peel the skin right off me. Samuel let out a cold laugh. "Owen, you were quite the show today. Over 50 classmates all witnessed your mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Explain to me exactly what kind of chest tightness or shortness of breath Irene had that required you to seal her mouth shut. If I were still the 17-year-old who valued face above all else, I'd be so ashamed by now I'd want to crawl through the cracks in the floor straight to the center of the earth. But the man standing before him now is 30 years old, a CEO who has matched wits with countless old foxes in the business world." I took a deep breath, and in an instant, my face twisted into a complicated expression blending regret, anxiety, and an intense thirst for academic achievement. I took a step forward, slightly bending my waist, my voice sincere enough to practically drip with emotion. "Teacher, I was wrong. The truth is, I've been under a lot of psychological pressure lately." Samuel was taken aback, clearly not expecting this reaction from me, and raised an eyebrow. "Pressure? And that gives you an excuse to act like a pervert in public?" "No, it wasn't perverted behavior, it was intermittent cognitive impairment caused by excessive stress." I made up nonsense without changing my expression, a glint of clear stupidity shining in my eyes. "Recently, during the mock exams, my math scores have been hovering right around 100 points, and I've been so anxious. Last night, I stayed up until 3 in the morning grinding problems. During class just now, I was basically in a half-asleep, half-awake daze." I paused, my tone growing deeply sincere, even carrying a hint of tremor. "In my hallucination, I dreamed that I and classmate Irene were taking the college entrance exam. She was so nervous that she suddenly fainted. As her childhood friend who has known her for over a decade, only one thought crossed my mind: to save her. Teacher, that's the collective honor and instinct to do good that's etched into my bones. Samuel's mouth hung slightly open, and the cup of water in his hand even wobbled. He had been teaching for 20 years and had seen mischievous students and those who refused to admit fault. But he had never seen anyone elevate a classroom kiss to the level of collective honor and courageous action. You, don't give me that nonsense. Samuel slammed the table, but his tone noticeably weakened, and a flicker of doubt even crossed his eyes. Really? You're not lying. Without changing my expression, I stood upright with the proper attitude. Teacher, I was wrong. The admission of fault was so swift and sincere that it left Samuel's prepared lecture stuck in his throat. He paused for 2 seconds, frowned, and asked, "What exactly are you sorry for?" I shouldn't have been distracted in class, shouldn't have disrupted classroom discipline, and shouldn't have acted impulsively. I confessed earnestly, scoring full marks for my attitude. Samuel was left speechless by my response. He sighed and said, "You and Irene have been close since childhood, I know that. You're both good kids. Irene is quiet, sensible, and excels academically, while you're clever and quick-witted, just not hard-working enough. I don't care how close you two are. In high school, the most important thing is studying. Early romantic relationships affect your grades, understand? If this were my previous life at this age, I would have immediately denied it, hastily distancing myself for fear of being labeled as having a teenage romance and jeopardizing so-called future prospects. But now, I just slightly raise my head, speaking in a serious tone. Teacher, it's not puppy love. I'm serious." Samuel nearly spat out his tea, staring at me wide-eyed, looking utterly incredulous. "Are you serious? Owen, do you realize what you're saying?" My gaze was unwavering, with not a hint of jest as I said, "I know. I didn't understand before and missed out on a lot. But now I'm very clear, I like Irene. It's not a momentary impulse, I truly want to be with her for the long haul." All the teachers in the office instantly fell silent, turning to look at me in unison, and the atmosphere became subtly tense. Samuel adjusted his glasses and rubbed his temples, feeling as if his head was splitting from the pain. This child. I warned you about the dangers of puppy love, and you're talking to me about sincerity. Are you sleeping through class too much to think clearly?" "Teacher, I won't let it affect my studies," I said with firm conviction. "From now on, I'll listen carefully in class and seriously work on practice problems. My grades won't drop, they'll improve. I'll work hard with her, and together we'll aim for the best university." Having weathered the harsh realities of society and faced life and death decisions, the high school curriculum was not particularly challenging for me. In my past life, aside from building a business, I had taught myself countless subjects. High school coursework was merely a piece of cake. My only shortcoming had been youthful arrogance and a failure to cherish what mattered. Samuel stared at my extremely earnest gaze, and for a moment, he couldn't tell whether I was losing my mind or had truly come to my senses. After a long silence, he finally waved his hand and said, "Fine, I'll trust you this once. I won't mark this as a mistake or notify your parents this time. But remember what you said today. If your grades slip in the next monthly exam, I'll call your parents immediately and have your seats changed." "No problem." I agreed readily, understanding the implications deep down. Change seats? That would never happen. My deskmate, my little girl, will forever be Irene. No one else can take her place. Chapter 4. When I returned to the classroom from the office, as soon as I walked in, all my classmates' eyes instantly fixed on me. Those gazes were filled with curiosity, gossip, and mockery, mixed with a strong sense of schadenfreude. Without looking to either side, I walked straight to my seat. Irene was lying on the desk, her cheek pressed against her arm, pretending to read a book. But in reality, her gaze was wandering, secretly glancing at the door, waiting for me to return. "Come." Upon seeing me return, she immediately looked up, unable to hide the worry in her eyes. Did the teacher scold you? Did he make you write a self-criticism? Seeing her nervous look, my heart softened. I leaned in close to her ear and whispered with a smile, I did scold you, and as punishment, I'll treat you well from now on, study hard, and help you get into college. Warm breath brushed past her ear, and Irene's ear instantly went numb, turning bright red in a flash. She shrank back, glaring at me with feigned annoyance. What nonsense are you talking about? Seeing her utterly embarrassed, I was in a great mood and sat back down with a smile. Several classmates nearby leaned in, winking and raising their eyebrows. The class monitor Ryan poked my arm, looking gossipy. Nice one, man, a dark horse. After hiding a secret crush for all these years, you finally let it out today. Kissing your deskmate in public, aren't you afraid of getting expelled? Another guy, Howard, joined in the teasing. Come clean, you two have been together for a while, haven't you? You've been fooling the whole class. I gave a faint smile, my gaze gently resting on Irene beside me, my tone firm. We weren't together before, but we'll be together from now on. As soon as the words were spoken, the surroundings erupted into a buzz of commotion. Irene buried her head even lower, her cheeks burning hot. Her little hands had nowhere to rest, so she could only grip her textbook tightly, pretending to read intently, but after flipping through it for a while, she still hadn't turned to the right page. Seeing how shy she was, I raised my hand to push away the boys who had gathered around to tease us. Stop messing around. Class is starting. Don't disturb my deskmate's studies. Seeing how protective I was, the crowd laughed and scattered, but deep down, they had already decided that the two of us were meant to be together. During the next break, Irene completely ignored me. Not out of real anger, but purely out of shyness. No matter how I tried to strike up a conversation or tease her, she wouldn't look up. She either pretended to do practice problems or organized her notes, putting on an air of keep away. But her slightly trembling shoulders gave away her true feelings. I wasn't in a hurry either. I just quietly stayed by her side, occasionally stealing a glance at her, never getting tired of looking. In my past life, I had never looked at her so quietly, so attentively. So this is what my girl looked like when she was young, so beautiful, so pure, so untainted. When the lunch break bell rang, the students all got up one after another to head to the cafeteria for lunch. Gradually, the classroom emptied out, leaving only a handful of people. Irene finally dared to look up, casting a quick sideways glance at me as she whispered, "What are you having for lunch?" "Whatever you're having, I'll have the same," I replied instantly, my eyes burning with intensity as I looked at her. Blushing again under my gaze, she kept her head down while tidying up her utensils. "Then, let's go to the cafeteria to eat." "Okay." I stood up and naturally took her hand. Irene's whole body stiffened as she struggled in panic. "Don't hold my hand. There are so many people outside." I kept walking, pulling her along as we went outside, my tone calm and assured. "So there are many people. Don't be afraid. I'm holding the hand of someone I love, there's nothing shameful about that." Irene was stunned by my straightforward confession, her heart was racing wildly, and she felt completely dazed. She obediently let me lead her all the way out of the classroom. The afternoon sun was warm and gentle, and a light breeze blew through the hallway, stirring the hem of the young students' uniforms. Students passing by couldn't help but glance at the sight of us holding hands. Immediately, there were bursts of soft gasps and low laughter. Wow! They actually held hands. Oh my God, that's too sweet. Childhood friends to lovers. This gossip is too sweet, I could savor it for a whole year. The murmurs around them didn't stop, and Irene's face flushed red from her head to her neck. She practically pressed herself behind me, too embarrassed to lift her head and face anyone. I felt the gentle tug on my wrist from her, and my heart softened beyond words. I deliberately slowed my pace, shielding her as we moved forward. In my past life, I was timid and hesitant, dared not make it public, dared not show favoritism, and in the end, I lost her completely. This time around, I will be open and bold, letting everyone know that Irene is the one I hold dearest in my heart. Unable to bear the weight of so many eyes on her, Irene seized a moment in the queue and quietly tugged at my sleeve. "Owen, loosen your grip a bit. So many people are watching, it's too awkward." I looked down at her, a hint of a smile in my eyes. "Not letting go. If I let you go, what if you run away later?" "I won't run. Where would I even go?" She was both angry and embarrassed, her cheeks puffing up slightly, looking utterly adorable. I pretended to be serious and said, "Hard to say. Back then, I was clueless and always overlooked you. Now I need to keep a closer eye on you." Upon hearing this, Irene's eyes flickered slightly. She looked up at me, a trace of confusion and doubt in her gaze. She seemed to find me especially strange today, bold, straightforward, and affectionate. A far cry from the former Owen, who was careless and only treated her like a brother. I didn't explain much. Some secrets are better kept in the heart. I would only spend the rest of my life slowly making it up to her and loving her well. I skillfully ordered all her favorite dishes. Irene stared at the table full of food that suited her taste, slightly stunned. "How did you know I wanted these?" I spoke softly, my tone gentle. "I've always known. I just never took good care of ordering meals for you before." Irene blinked her wet eyes, her heart feeling as if it were filled with something warm and sweet. We found an empty seat by the window and sat down. Many classmates around us secretly stared and whispered, their eyes brimming with the joy of fangirling over our interactions. Feeling uncomfortable under all the attention, Irene lowered her head and ate her meal in small, restrained bites. Seeing this, I deliberately raised my head and swept a cool gaze around the room. Instantly, all the curious eyes withdrew in unison. Everyone pretended to focus on their food, too intimidated to sneak another glance. Just kidding. Right now, my aura is fully unleashed, my eyes are calm and cool, a world away from my usual slacker demeanor. No one dares to provoke me easily. The cafeteria instantly quieted down. Irene sneaked a glance at me, surprise written all over her eyes. "What's up with you today?" "What's up?" I picked up a piece of sweet and sour pork and placed it in her bowl. She furrowed her little brows in serious thought. "It's just, you're bold yet gentle, and you know exactly what to say. It's totally different from before. In the past, I would only treat her like a brother, joke around, snatch her snacks, and make her angry. I never showed her kindness so directly, let alone whispered sweet nothings or stood up for her." Looking into her clear eyes, I said softly, "I was foolish before and didn't know how to cherish you. Now I've come to my senses and want to treat you well." Irene's heart skipped a beat, and her cheeks flushed again. She lowered her head and shoveled food into her mouth frantically, even the tips of her ears turning bright red. Watching her shy expression, I couldn't help but smile. This was good. No scheming, no interests, no deceit. Just pure teenage infatuation, simple and real. While having a meal, the murmured conversations of a few girls at the next table drifted into my ears. "I never thought Owen would like Irene. They grew up together since childhood, this is just too adorable. I heard before that Winnie from Class 6, Senior 3, might have had a crush on Owen. She used to come see him a lot, but now she's totally out of the running, right?" "She definitely is. Owen was so blatant today, it's obvious he only likes Irene." When I heard the name Winnie, the tenderness in my eyes instantly faded a few shades. In my past life, it was this woman, with her gentle and considerate facade, who deceived me for 6 whole years. From high school to college, and then to starting a business and getting married, I was blinded by her appearance and gradually pushed away the one who loved me the most. In the end, I lost everything, both money and love, and died with regret. In this life, I will avoid her at all costs and never make the same mistake again. Winnie's tenderness is like candy coated in poison. I've been fooled once, and I won't be fooled a second time. I lifted my eyes to look at the little girl quietly eating in front of me, and my gaze was once again filled with tenderness. Only Irene is the one and only sweetness in my life. After the meal, I proactively cleared the tray and took Irene's hand as we walked out of the cafeteria. Chapter 5. The afternoon sunlight was lazy and gentle, a breeze rustling through the treetops, casting dappled shadows across the ground. We strolled slowly along the tree-lined path on campus, leisurely making our way back to the classroom. On the way, Irene hesitated for a long time before finally speaking softly. "Owen, what exactly happened to you today?" I turned to look at her, a hint of a smile in my eyes. "Why ask that all of a sudden?" She stopped walking and looked at me seriously, her eyes clear and bright. "You're way too out of character today. You've never taken the initiative to kiss me before, never held my hand in public, and never said things like that. Do you dislike it?" I asked back seriously. Irene was momentarily at a loss for words, her cheeks flushed red, her eyes darting away as she murmured softly, "No. I don't dislike it. It's just too sudden." I'm a bit stunned. She was stunned because all the feelings she had hidden for over a decade were suddenly fully reciprocated by me. I raised my hand and gently brushed away the stray strands of hair blown across her forehead by the wind, my fingertips tenderly touching her skin. "Irene." I called her name earnestly, my tone solemn yet gentle. In the past, I was foolish, dense, unable to read people's hearts, nor understand your feelings. But from today onward, I won't miss the chance again. I like you, not on a whim, but with a sincerity that has been delayed for many years. A gentle breeze happened to blow by, stirring the girl's hair and also stirring the boy's burning feelings. Irene stared at me blankly, her eyes gradually misting over with a thin layer of tears, the tip of her nose faintly red. A secret crush hidden for over a decade, careful companionship, and heartbeats stolen in secret. Countless moments of solitary anticipation and disappointment had finally found their home in this instant. She had held back for too long, endured for too long, and waited for too long. You really like me?" Her voice trembled slightly, carrying a fragile disbelief. I nodded, each word firm and certain. "Really? Truer than gold? Not joking?" Not a spur-of-the-moment decision, she pressed on, her eyes filled with unease. Seeing her restless look, my heart ached. So for all these years, she had always been so insecure, silently and humbly having feelings for me. I reached out and gently pulled her into my arms, my movements tender and solemn. The warm embrace completely enveloped her, shielding her from all the noise of the outside world. I whispered close to her ear, making a gentle promise. "No jokes, no impulsiveness. For the rest of my life, I only want to be good to you." Irene leaned against my chest, her body trembling slightly, her nose tingling, and her eyes instantly reddening. There was no loud crying or hysterics, only a restrained yet fervent joy. After years of silent devotion, she had finally earned my turning back, my favor. "Owen, you'd better not lie to me." Her muffled voice came from my embrace, tinged with a sob. I held her tightly, my tone unwavering. "I will never lie to you. In this life and the next, I will only love you." On the tree-lined path, the boy held the girl in his arms. The sunlight was gentle, the breeze tender, and the moment felt timeless and peaceful. All the regrets from the past life were now perfectly fulfilled. In the afternoon class, I fully focused, listening attentively and taking notes diligently. The high school knowledge that once felt dull and tedious now seemed clear and exceptionally simple as I calmly organized it. While listening to the lecture, I occasionally glanced sideways at the little girl beside me, who was deeply engrossed in solving problems. A profound sense of reassurance filled my heart. Irene felt uneasy under my gaze, her hand holding the pen trembling slightly. Unable to help herself, she whispered in a soft reproach, "Stop staring at me. Focus on the class." "You're more interesting than the lecture," I murmured with a laugh, my tone full of affection. "Flatterer." She shot me a glance, but couldn't help the slight smile tugging at her lips, her amusement barely hidden. The little girl who once only clumsily harbored a secret crush and silently gave, has now finally learned to accept my affection openly, her eyes gradually gaining more joy and confidence. After class, I took out my math exam paper and started solving problems. In my past life, I had struggled for years, my logical thinking far surpassing that of a high school student, making these problems a breeze for me. I quickly finished a set of test papers with a perfect score, each step clear and complete. Irene accidentally glanced sideways at my test paper and instantly froze, her eyes filled with shock. How did you get everything right? In the past, I always hovered around the passing line in math. I did my homework carelessly and sloppily, never being this precise and efficient. Study hard, and you'll naturally get it. I smiled faintly, pretending it was no big deal. Irene blinked, feeling more and more like I had undergone a complete transformation today, as if I had suddenly had an epiphany and was reborn. How could she know that I came back with a lifetime of experience and regrets? I not only want to study hard and get into a top university, but also protect my little girl, ensuring she lives a stable and happy life forever. Then, if I have questions I don't understand in the future, can I ask you? She asked softly, testing the waters. I ruffled her hair and smiled gently. Ask me anytime. 247 exclusive Q&A, free lifetime service. Irene was amused by my words, her eyes curving into crescents, her dimples shallow and sweet, so beautiful that I couldn't look away. Just as we were happily practicing problems, a sudden commotion came from the classroom door. A gentle and pleasant female voice rang out, "Owen, I heard you were called to the office by the teacher this morning. Are you okay?" I looked up and saw Winnie standing at the door, dressed in a clean school uniform, with long hair draped over her shoulders, a warm and appropriate smile, and a gentle demeanor, a perfect campus goddess image. This seemingly gentle and kind woman was the one who destroyed my life in my past life. She drained my sincerity and squeezed out my value. The moment I saw her, all the warmth in my eyes instantly faded, replaced by nothing but icy coldness and detachment. In my past life, I was completely fooled by this gentle and harmless demeanor. I thought I had found true love, but little did I know I was inviting a wolf into the house. The classroom instantly fell silent, and all the students' gazes immediately focused on the three of us, the gossip atmosphere instantly reaching its peak. On one side was the gentle, beautiful, and sought-after school beauty. On the other side was the childhood friend and deskmate with mutual feelings. The battlefield was instantly set. Irene's fingertips paused slightly, a trace of barely noticeable nervousness and unease flickering in her eyes as she lowered her head. I instantly caught her subtle mood, my heart tightening as I instinctively reached out. Gently holding her hand, I gave her a full sense of security. Then, I looked up at Winnie standing by the door. My tone was indifferent, devoid of any warmth. "I'm fine, you don't need to worry about me." The gentle smile on Winnie's face froze slightly, as if she hadn't expected me to be so cold. In the past, faced with her concern, I would have been flattered and overjoyed, responding with warmth and politeness. She quickly composed herself, still smiling gently. "I just heard that you were criticized by the teacher for breaking class rules, and I was a bit worried about you. By the way, I bought some milk and snacks for you." As she spoke, she reached out and handed over an exquisite snack bag. In my past life, I accepted her kindness time and time again, gradually falling for her, mistakenly believing she was gentle, considerate, and sincere toward me. But now, I find it utterly ironic. I couldn't even be bothered to glance at her, directly refusing with a firm tone, "No need, thank you. I don't want any." Winnie was completely stunned, her eyes filled with shock and confusion. All the classmates around were also stunned, looking at me with disbelief. Everyone knew Winnie had extremely high standards and rarely took the initiative to show favor to a guy. Now, she was actively giving me things and showing concern, yet I had refused without hesitation. Winnie furrowed her brows slightly, her tone carrying a hint of grievance. "Owen, what's wrong? Did I do something to upset you?" "No," I said calmly, my gaze clear yet distant. "Just don't send me anything from now on, and there's no need to show me special concern. It's unnecessary." My words were blunt and straightforward, leaving no room for leeway. Winnie's gentle smile completely faltered, the shock in her eyes turning into embarrassment. Her fingertips pinched the delicate snack bag, caught in a dilemma, standing awkwardly at the classroom door. In the past, she had always been the center of attention at school, with countless boys taking the initiative to show her affection. She had always been the one to reject others. When had she ever been so bluntly and coldly turned down? The entire class held their breath, eating their melons in fear, not daring to breathe. Anyone could see that I was drawing a clear line, not giving Winnie any face at all. I couldn't be bothered with her embarrassment. My palm gently tightened, rubbing Irene's slightly cold little hand beside me. In an instant, all the coldness melted away, leaving only the young girl in front of me in my eyes. My preference, from now on, will only be given to Irene alone. I was blind before and missed out, but now I am completely clear-headed. I will never allow anyone or anything to disrupt our stability. Winnie froze for a few seconds, bit her lower lip, and put on a hint of feigned fragility and grievance. In a soft voice, she said, "Owen, I'm just kindly caring about you. There's no need for you to be so cold, is there? Weren't we always fine before?" Before, I was immature and misunderstood the boundaries. I spoke calmly, each word clear and resonant, echoing through the quiet classroom. I have someone I like. If I always accept gifts from other girls or respond to their concern, my girlfriend would be unhappy. The moment the words fell, the classroom instantly erupted. Girlfriend. Oh my God. It's official. I'm freaking out right here. That's so bold and doting. Muffled exclamations rose and fell, and all eyes turned to Irene, whose cheeks were flushed red, filled with envy and the thrill of catching the sweet moment. Irene was completely frozen, her ears red enough to bleed, her heart pounding so fast it felt like it would burst out of her chest. She lifted her head slightly, her moist eyes staring blankly at me, flustered yet sweet. Her fingers instinctively and gently squeezed mine in return. This is my blatant favoritism, a bold and passionate public declaration. The secret crush that once hid in the shadows is now laid out in the open under the sun, shielded tightly. Winnie's face instantly turned pale, her delicate makeup barely holding up, a trace of gloom replacing the disbelief in her eyes. She stared at me intently, as if completely unable to accept this reversal. In her plan, I had good family background, was smart and capable, full of potential. I was a high-quality backup option she had already settled on, waiting only for her senior year to end, then naturally drawing closer and securing me steadily. But she never expected that I, who had always been courteous and gentle with her, would suddenly change so drastically. Not only did I completely distance myself from her, but I also made a public declaration. The relationship with Irene, personally shattering all her schemes. The person you like, is Irene. Winnie's voice trembled slightly, carrying reluctance and probing. I looked down at the shy girl by my side, my eyes overflowing with tenderness, and said in a resolute tone, "Yes, I only like her." Without a trace of hesitation, without a moment of doubt. Winnie was completely speechless, her hand tightening slightly around the snack bag. Her face alternated between pale and flushed, and under the gaze of the entire class, she was mortified beyond belief. She forced out a stiff smile and said, "So that's how it is." I was presumptuous. Sorry. With that, she didn't linger any longer, turned around, and walked away quickly, her back exuding a hint of shame and reluctance. Watching her retreating figure, I felt no stir in my heart, only relief. Severing all entanglements, cutting off every connection, from now on, my life holds only my future and Irene. The classroom burst into full liveliness, as the students could no longer hold back and turned around to tease us. "Nice going, Owen." Lightspeed official announcement, sweetness overload. "No wonder you ignored everyone before, turns out your heart was already set on Irene." Childhood sweethearts finding their way to each other, what kind of fictional fairy tale plot is this? Facing everyone's teasing, I accepted it calmly, a smile lingering on my lips. I turned and tucked Irene's little hand securely into my school uniform pocket, holding it close. The little girl I was protecting by my side kept her head lowered the whole time. Her face was flushed red, too shy to look up. Yet she obediently let me hold her hand, her fingertips gently brushing against my palm, soft, sweet, and well-behaved. Chapter 6. The afternoon passed with an especially gentle warmth. I focused on solving problems and organizing notes, my train of thought clear and efficient. The math and physics problems that once gave me headaches now came effortlessly. Occasionally, when Irene got stuck on a question, I would lean in and patiently explain it to her. I slowed down my pace and went through the steps in detail. Sunlight fell on the desk where we sat side by side, on our overlapping wrists. Time was tender, steady, and healing. Ryan, the classmate next to me, was marveling in awe and secretly poked my arm. "Owen, you've really wised up. Not only are you bold in love, but you've also hit your stride in studies. This contrast is insane." I didn't even look up, continuing to highlight key points for Irene, and said with a faint smile, "I didn't want to learn before, but now I've got the motivation." My motivation was never about the vague ambitions of fame and fortune. It's the little girl beside me, who grew up with me and has been waiting for me to love her. As the evening school bell rang, the sunset dyed half the sky red, the afterglow gentle and enchanting. The students packed their bags and left one after another, and the classroom quickly emptied out. I skillfully helped Irene pack her school bag, slung it over one shoulder, and naturally took her hand with the other. "Come on, let's go home. Our families have been old neighbors for years. We've been going to and from school together since childhood, walking the same path for over a decade. But back then, it was as brothers side by side. Now, it's as lovers holding hands, a completely different state of mind." As we stepped out of the school gate, the evening breeze gently blew, dispelling the heat of the day. Many students on the road kept glancing our way, whispering playful remarks at the sight of us holding hands. Irene still felt shy and instinctively tried to pull her hand back, but I held it tighter, lowering my head with a smile to reassure her. "Don't hide, there's nothing to be ashamed of. But so many people are watching." Her cheeks flushed slightly as she murmured softly, "Then let everyone watch." My tone was open and sincere. Let the whole school know that in this life, I've set my heart on no one but Irene. The straightforward and fervent confession struck Irene's heart like a blazing fire. Her eyes curved into crescents, unable to hide the smile that tugged at her lips. As we walked down the familiar old street, the roadside stalls were bustling with the warm glow of cooking fires. The aroma of grilled sausages, milk tea, and sugar-roasted chestnuts filled the air, a scent uniquely belonging to youthful days. I stopped in my tracks and looked at her. "What do you want to eat?" "My treat." Irene's eyes lit up, but she pretended to be reserved, murmuring softly, "I want to eat a grilled sausage and have some hot milk tea." "Done." I took her hand and walked over to the stall, ordering skillfully. I remembered all her preferences. The grilled sausage should be slightly spicy and slathered in sweet sauce. The milk tea should be 30% sugar, warm, and without boba. The stall owner, an old acquaintance from the neighborhood, watched us and chuckled teasingly. "You two grew up together, and now you're all grown up. What a perfect match." Irene lowered her head with a faint smile, her ears tinged with red. I responded calmly, my eyes full of affection. "Yeah, she's my girlfriend. We're perfect for each other." The boss laughed even more heartily and generously added an extra half-spoonful of sauce for us, "Wishing you two the best as you grow together." Taking the warm grilled sausages and milk tea, I first handed the milk tea to her. Then I tore off a small piece of sausage, blew on it to cool it down, and brought it to her lips. Irene opened her mouth slightly, obediently ate it, her eyes sparkling. Like a little kitten being fed, soft and adorable. Watching her satisfied expression, a wave of warmth surged in my heart. "Owen," Irene said softly while sipping her warm milk tea, suddenly calling out to me. I looked down at her. "Will you ever go back to the way you were before?" She looked up at me, a hint of cautious unease hidden in her eyes. "Go back to only treating me as a friend, not being this good to me like now?" My heart tightened. I stopped in my tracks and looked at her seriously, my tone solemn and unwavering. "No, never. Before, I was foolish, dense, and ungrateful, missing out on your genuine feelings for over a decade. I reached up and gently tousled her hair, speaking with utter sincerity. From today on, I will love you a little more each day than the day before. It will only get better, never regress by even a step. I won't let you secretly hurt anymore, won't make you wait in silence, and won't let your feelings go unanswered. The sunset fell softly across my brow, both gentle and resolute. Every promise came straight from the heart, with not a shred of pretense. Irene stared at me, her eyes slightly glistening, and nodded with a smile. Okay, I trust you. Chapter 7. We strolled slowly back to the neighborhood and happened to run into my mom and Irene's mom returning from grocery shopping together. My mom and Irene's mom walked side by side, chatting and laughing. The moment they saw us holding hands as we came back, both of them stopped in their tracks. They exchanged a glance, and their eyes instantly brimmed with the playful delight of bystanders savoring the gossip. The two children who grew up together, every move they made, the parents had long noticed, but had simply never called it out. Irene's mother suppressed a smile and looked at Irene with feigned seriousness, saying, "Not coming home earlier after school?" Irene instantly blushed, hurriedly let go of my hand, and hid behind her mother. I quickly chimed in to explain, it was me who insisted on dragging her along to buy something, so we were delayed a bit on the way. My mom looked at my anxious expression and teased with a smile, "All right, stop scolding the kids. I think they're both doing just fine." "Owen, don't bully Irene." I obediently responded with a sincere tone, "Mom, I won't. I'll never bully her in my life, I'll only protect her." That heartfelt remark brought smiles to both parents' faces. The two families had been close neighbors and friends for years, always treating each other's children as their own. There was never a hint of opposition, instead, they were genuinely happy to see it happen. In my past life, when I stubbornly chose Winnie, both sets of parents secretly regretted it. They felt I had missed out on the best girl, but they didn't say much out of respect. Now, as I turn back and hold Irene's hand tightly, it is precisely the happy ending everyone had hoped for. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, we each headed home. Once home, I put down my school bag and proactively helped my mom wash vegetables and cook, unusually industrious. As she sorted through the vegetables, my mom looked at me with a smile and asked, "You're in such a good mood today. Had a great time playing with Irene?" I nodded without any concealment, "Yeah, really happy. Mom, Irene and I are together." My mom was stunned for a moment, then her eyes crinkled with laughter. "I've long suspected it. You've never been able to take your eyes off Irene since you were little, just too stubborn to admit it. Finally figured it out, huh? Used to be slow, now I understand," I said with a frank smile. My mom spoke gently, "As long as you understand. Irene is a good girl, gentle, sensible, and kind-hearted. If you ever dare to let her down, I'll be the first to hold you accountable. And don't let your studies slip. You two should grow together, got it?" "I get it, Mom," I replied earnestly. No melodramatic parental opposition, no harsh scolding or suppression, only gentle reminders and blessings. In this moment, I fully realized just how absurd my past life had been. I gave up a harmonious family, a sincere lover, and a stable life. Instead, I chased after empty fame and false tenderness, only to end up alone, dying with regret. After dinner, I washed the dishes and returned to my room. I took out my textbooks and exam papers, carefully reviewing and filling in the gaps. My phone vibrated, it was a message from Irene. "Are you asleep yet?" My fingertips tapped lightly on the screen as I replied. "Not yet, just grinding away at practice problems. How about you?" "I'm working on homework too." "Oh, and thank you for this afternoon." At the end, there was a soft, shy kitten emoji. I stared at the screen, a smile tugging at my lips without me realizing. "What are you thanking me for?" "For having my back. And, for liking me." Just a few simple words, gentle and sincere, hitting me right in the chest and leaving it soft. The regrets and grievances she had tearfully expressed before dying in her previous life were finally completely fulfilled at this moment. I replied quickly, every word sincere. I should be the one to say thank you for waiting for me all these years. From now on, all my affection and gentleness belong to you. Rest early, I'll get up early tomorrow to pick you up for school. She soon sent back a sweet smiley face, okay. See you tomorrow. Putting down my phone, I gazed at the gentle night outside the window, feeling an immense sense of peace. To be reborn once is not just about gaining a second chance, but the greatest fortune is being able to hold Irene's hand again. In just half a month, my grades skyrocketed visibly. From being around the 20th in class, I stormed all the way into the top 10. My scores in math, physics, and chemistry were nearly perfect. I was repeatedly praised by the teacher in front of the class, completely overturning everyone's perception of me. Every time Samuel mentioned me in class, his face was full of gratification. There was no more of the previous frustration and headache. Instead, he often used me as an example to encourage the whole class to work hard. Many classmates remarked that not only did Owen's grades not drop after starting a relationship, but he actually went straight into an incredible comeback, truly unbelievable. Only I knew that it was love that gave me endless motivation, and it was fulfillment that gave me steady confidence. During that time, Winnie never came to our class again and completely disappeared. Occasionally, when we happened to meet on campus, she would deliberately avoid our gaze. She kept her distance, showing none of the former warmth or kindness. I felt nothing about it, even feeling quite relieved. Away from false scheming and draining relationships, my life was left with only brightness and gentleness. In the remaining time of senior year, relying on my past life's business acumen and logical thinking, I became a standout dark horse at school. Not only did my own grades soar, but I also devoted all my efforts to carefully tutoring Irene. We supported each other and fought side by side. On the day the college entrance exam results were released, we lived up to expectations and both got into the same top university in the country. The moment we received our admission letters, the sky was bathed in the gentle glow of the sunset, just like our bright future ahead. Teacher Samuel beamed with joy in the office. Meanwhile, I held Irene's hand tightly, feeling an immense sense of reassurance. After entering university, with the memories of a previous life and a mature business acumen, I naturally had no intention of simply staying within the campus. I keenly seized the new business opportunities of the era and decided to start my own entrepreneurial journey while studying. Upon learning of my decision, Irene didn't hesitate for a moment. Her eyes were as clear as ever, and she looked at me with tears welling up. "Owen, just go ahead and do whatever you want to do. I'll be with you." To support me, Irene turned down all her club activities and social engagements, devoting all her spare time to accompanying me as we explored the market, worked on plans, and revised PPTs. No matter how tough or tiring it got, she never complained even once. However, starting a business turned out to be much harder than expected. When the early-stage project was reaching a critical point, I still lacked a large portion of the necessary investment funds. During that time, I faced rejection everywhere I turned and was overwhelmed with anxiety, even mentally preparing myself for another failure. Irene saw it all, her heart aching for me, but she said nothing. A few days later, she suddenly slapped a bank card down in front of me. Only later did I find out that this foolish girl, without telling anyone, secretly sold the house her parents had bought for her in the university city ahead of time. She also borrowed some money from her parents. "I trust you, Owen. Take this money and invest it." She looked at me, her eyes sparkling with unconditional faith. Holding that heavy bank card, my eyes reddened completely. Just how blind was I in my past life to have overlooked someone willing to gamble her entire future on me? With the infusion of Irene's crucial funds, the project smoothly overcame its difficulties and captured the market at an astonishing pace. Relying on strategic vision that surpassed the era, combined with the hard work of both of us, the company successfully went public within just a few years, and I became the youngest business prodigy in the industry. At the grand IPO celebration party, under the witness of countless flashing cameras and media, I slowly walked up to Irene and knelt on one knee. In my hand, aside from the dazzling diamond ring, I also held a notarized and legally binding share transfer agreement. The agreement clearly stated, all personal shares of the company held under Owen's name shall be unconditionally transferred to Irene's name. Past and present, you healed me with all your tenderness, even willing to stake everything for me. I looked up at her, her eyes glistening with tears, my voice trembling yet firm. Irene, this business empire was built by me for you. From now on, I am yours, and the company is yours too. Will you marry me? Irene covered her mouth and broke down in tears, nodding desperately at me amidst the cheers and applause of the crowd. Happiness and fulfillment, this was the ending I had always dreamed of. Soon after, with the blessings of both families and close friends, I held a grand wedding for Irene that took the entire city by storm. In the 3rd year of our marriage, Irene gave birth to a pair of adorable twins at the hospital. Standing in the delivery room, I held my loudly crying son in my left arm and protected my soft, gentle daughter with my right. Turning to look at my wife, who lay on the hospital bed exhausted yet radiant with happiness, my heart felt a surge of warmth. The desolation, regrets, and betrayals from my previous life had already dissipated like smoke. In this life, I had finally shed all pretense and openly protected my little girl. I had won the most extreme devotion and secured the most fulfilling life.